Previously on Derek Likes Sports.
Are we do you want to do rapid fire next week?
No,
No?
I don't. No,
Okay.
I don't. You can send them to me, and maybe I'll do a.
I'm picking the
do another.
Bills for the Thursday night.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Send me. Well, yeah, we can do Thursday night. You're picking the Bills over the Texans.
Bills over Texans. It's hard. They didn't look good against them last year.
I pick the Texans, but
I think
I'm gonna give
Keon's
it some
going to be
thought.
active.
Red Sox fans have longed to hear it. The Boston Red Sox are world champions. Wycheck. Dyson's going to go all the way. With 3-2 for the winner. Pass caught by Dennis Bryant.
Hello and welcome back to Derek Likes Sports. Last week I did an episode by myself, and you know what? I enjoyed the sound of my own voice so much that I've returned to do it again, and I am going to preview Week 12 of the NFL season. It is Friday as I'm recording this, and last night we already had the first game of Week 12. Not going to say a ton about it because I want to wait until Devesh is back, and we'll record something early next week before Thanksgiving. The worst holiday, I will say. I feel pretty confident saying that. It's definitely like bottom 5, definitely overrated. I mean, the food, not great. None of my favorite food. Stuffing is good. Sweet potatoes, good. Unless you put marshmallows on them, that should be a criminal offense. What else? What other hot takes can I say off the top here to get people to stop listening? Football. It kind of ruins the football week to me. Of course, this is, next week, not the week I'm actually talking about, but I'm going to pre-complain about it. You have the 3 games on Thursday. You have the Black Friday game on Friday. You have a diminished Sunday slate as a result. Just not great. It's not great. It's too much. Anyway, I'm going to stop bashing Thanksgiving and we'll talk about this game just briefly. It really kind of tanked the Bills' chances of winning the division. As a result of their loss last night, it fell to 9% chance of winning the division. I'm pulling all this from The Athletic, New York Times, The Athletic. They have a great kind of playoff odds calculator for each team. You can select a team, and then you can even go through and pick how the rest of their games go, and pick the rest of how all the games go. And it kind of gives you an idea of the playoff scenarios. I use it this time of year. I'm on that site multiple times a day, every day. I'm not sponsored by The Athletic. If they wanted to throw me money, though, I would accept it. Absolutely. I absolutely would accept it. Anyway, so the Bills lost last night. The Texans, best defense in the league. I think everyone got to see that last night, maybe for the first time all year. They're good at every level of defense. They put a ton of pressure on Josh Allen. I loved this stat from Next Gen Stats that entering the fourth quarter, Josh Allen had traveled more yards by distance from snap to whistle than any other Bills receiver, which is, quarterbacks, they drop back. They kind of stand in the same area typically, and receivers are running routes and running all over the field. So kind of wild that entering the fourth quarter, Josh Allen had already run 566 yards. He had to move that much, just running for his life that entire game. He took some hits where it didn't look like he was going to be able to get up from them, and he did, thank goodness, but it was just a difficult night for the Bills. And all of that being said, they had a chance on the last drive to go down and win the game, and they didn't. So big win for the Texans. They now go into next week with a big game against the Colts, where if they win, they really improve their playoff chances. And I just wanted to point out one more thing. Back in July, I sent Devesh my kind of predictions, my game by game, records for each team, predictions going into the season. And I had the Bills, I think it was 13-4, number 1 seed in the AFC. I sent this to him, and his reaction was, you got the Bills as the 1 seed? They won't lose 4 games. Well, last night they lost their 4th game. Sorry, Devesh, even though you might not be listening to this because you're not on this episode. And I found out last week you don't listen to the ones you're not on. So you're not getting to hear me talk about your team, but he will be back next week, and I will grill him about this game, and he will get to the bottom of what's happening with the once Super Bowl contending Bills that now kind of have to fight for their playoff spot. All right, so another big game this week. Steelers at the Bears. These are two division leaders, the two division leaders in their respective Norths, the NFC and AFC North. And it doesn't really feel real for either of these teams. Honestly, the Ravens are right on the Steelers' heels. The Bears have had to pull off 3 crazy comeback wins against the Bengals, the Giants, and the Vikings in 3 straight weeks. 3 teams that likely will not be in the playoffs. In fact, if you look at the Bears' schedule, let me pull it up. They've only played, I think, 1 team with a record over 500. Yeah, the only team they've played with a winning record this year was Detroit week 2, and they lost that game 52-21. Not a great showing. So, going into this game, the other interesting thing about the Bears, they're 7-3, yet they have a negative point differential in large part because of that 31-point loss that they suffered to the Lions earlier in the season. I do think this team is definitely taking a step from last year. Last year, they were losing all the close games. They just didn't feel like a serious team, a team that could, finish a game, finish a win. They had that Hail Mary loss to the Commanders that kind of tanked their whole season. They lost like 10 in a row after that. And at least right now, they are finding ways to win games rather than finding ways to lose them, which is an important benchmark in a team's growth under a new coach. I think Ben Johnson's doing a great job. So going into this game, who do I think is going to win? I do worry about the Steelers going in with Mason Rudolph. Their defense is playing a lot better. But if Aaron Rodgers is forced to miss this game or play in a limited capacity, I mean, he has a fracture in his wrist. He may not be able to take a snap under center, so it might be a lot of shotgun, kind of take the snap and stand around, just look to throw it. No real play action game. And I think that could really hurt that offense that has kind of been hit or miss most of the season. Bears at home, it just feels like a game, though, that it feels like a classic. You expect the Steelers to win. You think they're the better team, and then they go out and just absolutely lay an egg. So I'm going to go with the Bears in this game. And I had Devesh send me his picks as well, just so we could clown on him next week if they don't work out. And he also picked the Bears at home. So that is Steelers Bears, 2 teams that are right in the thick of the playoff hunt, but I don't think anybody is taking them seriously as contenders or even teams that will ultimately make the playoffs, but kind of cool to see them, approaching Thanksgiving, leading their divisions. All right, the Patriots and the Bengals. Patriots got a lot of help from Houston last night on their road to a AFC East title. They are now a 91% favorite to win the AFC East, and they're right there in the thick of it for the number 1 seed. If they lose this week, it would drop to 85. But as you can see, they're in a really strong position. Big story going into this game, Jamar Chase will be forced to miss it with a suspension after spitting on Steelers defensive back Jalen Ramsey. Jalen Ramsey was ejected from that game for punching Jamar Chase, and then they went back and looked at the footage, and Jamar Chase, he's bad on him. Pretty clear. So he's going to miss a game. The Bengals have a horrid defense, but could get a big boost, just kind of morale, because Joe Burrow has been a full participant in practice this week, and there's a chance that he comes back to start this game. Joe Flacco also a little banged up, so that might be why they're kind of pushing it a little bit. It's because they don't really have a ton of other options, especially with Jake Browning not looking good in his time out there. And they have to win this game. If they lose this game, their playoff chances basically go down to 0. They would fall to 3-8. If they win this game, they're right kind of back in it. I mean, they'll need help. They'll need to win out. They'll need to win the rest of their games, but they do get to play Baltimore on Thanksgiving. That was kind of the new target date for Joe Burrow to come back initially. And now it seems like there's a chance he might play this week. So definitely something to watch for. Will make that game much more interesting. The Patriots trying to assert themselves as, the number 1 team in the AFC. Interestingly, they have not lost a road game this year, which is, surprising for a young quarterback and a new system, first-year head coach. But then you look at their schedule and you kind of see why. Their schedule has been extremely weak, and it will continue to be extremely weak. They do have a couple good wins. They beat Buffalo, of course, in Buffalo. It's one of their 5 away wins, but they can really put the clamps on that division if they win this week. So who do I think is going to win? Devesh went with New England, and I'm going to follow him with that, even if Burrow plays. Remember, the Patriots actually beat the Bengals last year, week 1. Weird game. Doesn't really kind of translate to this season. But I just, even if Burrow plays, I don't think the Bengals defense is good enough to keep them in this game. I think the Patriots offense has been absolutely clicking, and the Bengals have literally one of the worst defenses in NFL history, statistically. And I think that's going to hold them back, both in this game and ultimately making the playoffs this season. All right, moving on. Giants at the Lions. Second straight week. Jackson Dart will be out. So Jameis Winston will get his second start. He almost led them to a win last week against Green Bay. The Lions, they're coming off of a loss. You look at the Lions, the Lions just played their worst game, I think, of the season. They got blitzed to death, could not keep Jared Goff upright, and he played probably his worst game ever. Definitely as a Lion, it looked like, his bad days back with the Rams in that game. So they'll look to bounce back against a Giants defense that is not great. Although the Packers couldn't really do anything against them last week, but maybe that says more about the Packers than it does the Giants. I don't think the Lions are going to have any trouble in this game. I think they will probably win by, multiple touchdowns. That's kind of how I see that game going. Moving on to Minnesota at Green Bay. Minnesota, it's hard to say what they have going on with JJ McCarthy right now. There are a lot of metrics that look quite bad with that situation. But he does show flashes for plays at a time where it seems like, he makes big contested throws with tight windows, and it's like, okay, I see it. I see the vision. But then, he has the worst bad throw rate in the NFL, which isn't good. That's not a list that you want to be at the top of. The big thing for the Packers, if you look at their injury report this week, a third of their team is on it. Jordan Love got banged up last week. He looks like he's going to be fine. Josh Jacobs got banged up last week. He was limited on Thursday. Maybe he comes back. Maybe he doesn't. Hard to say. A lot of these guys it's kind of a load management thing where, like, Christian Watson is definitely going to play, but some of these guys are just, not practicing as much, so they have to be put down as limited. That being said, it's clear that this Packers team is very banged up, especially on the offensive line. The Vikings have a pretty good defense. They were in the game late last week. I've talked a lot about the Packers and how I'm kind of down on them relative to where other people are. Devesh went with the Packers, and you know what? I've had really bad luck picking against the Packers this year. And I'm going to do it again. I'm going to touch that stove again and go with the Vikings. I don't know why. I really actually don't think the Vikings are going to win this game. I don't think they're the better team. It's the vibes. I'm letting the vibes lead me. I think JJ McCarthy comes out and confuses us even more, puts together a great game, escapes Micah Parsons, and throws a just beautiful ball for a touchdown to Justin Jefferson at some point in this game. And we're going to watch that highlight, and we're going to be like, all right, maybe this guy isn't the worst quarterback in the NFL. All right, Seattle at Tennessee. I love that this game is the number 1 team in DVOA against the number 32 team in DVOA. That's combined total DVOA. If you don't know what that is, it's basically just a metric that combines a bunch of different statistics and creates a model for sort of ranking teams based on how they're performing this year. It adjusts based on opponent. So if you do well against a bad opponent, that doesn't do as much for your score as doing well against a good opponent would do, that sort of thing. And this is the offensive metric and the defensive metric combined. Seahawks, number 1 in the league, despite their loss last week to the Rams, and the Titans, number 32, which there are 32 teams in the NFL, and they are dead last. And that makes sense because they have not looked good at any point this season. Jackson Smith-Njigba continues his great season, 1,146 receiving yards through 10 weeks. What is his pace? You know what? I'm going to do this math live. 1,146. We're going to multiply that by, he's doing math live on a podcast. It is the best content we've ever listened to, watched. 2,062. He's on pace for 2,062 yards, which would be the first 2,000-yard receiving team season in NFL history. It's awesome. He's been incredible. He's been uncoverable, and I don't think the Titans are going to suddenly click on and have a pass defense that can stop him. The Seahawks have had a trend of going up by 20 or 30 points in the first half. I think they will continue that, and the Titans will continue their march toward a second straight year of having the number one overall pick. I assume Devesh chose Seattle. Yes, he did. And I am also choosing Seattle. So we're pretty much agreeing on all of the picks so far. Indy at the Chiefs. Now, think about this. I don't think anyone expected the Colts to be sitting there as a number one seed candidate and the Chiefs to be struggling to get into the playoffs. You look at their DVOA ranks, number 3 versus number 5, by far the best matchup. It's a 1 p.m. game, which is odd. You don't really see that often with the Chiefs. They're usually playing on a primetime game, or at least a 4:25 game. So that's kind of cool. The Chiefs' chances to make the playoffs still at 56%, which I think, I'm not going to argue with their math. I didn't do the math. That feels high given their situation. If we go back and look, at the playoff picture, and this was before Houston won. So I can pull up an updated one. It is a difficult road for them just because of the teams that they're going to have to leapfrog. The division is pretty much out for them. They're not going to be a team that can make up the distance. They're 4 games back of the Broncos, who have been good and don't seem like they're going to slow down. If you look, they now trail the Texans by half a game. They play the Texans in not next week, but the week after. They are tied with the Ravens. They lost to the Jaguars. They're a game behind them. They lost to the Bills. They're 2.5 behind them, or 1.5 behind them. And they lost to the Chargers. They're 1.5 behind them. And this is the problem, is these teams that are going to be the teams that they're competing with in the wild card race are teams that have already beaten them. Their game against Houston is going to be massive, but before that, they kind of really need to win this game, and it's against a good Colts team. Now, what the advantage that the Chiefs have is they're really good at home. They're 4-1 at home this year. And if you take a look here, if they win this game, they will go up to a 67% chance of making the playoffs. If they lose it, they fall to a 39% chance. So that's a huge delta between those two results. It's a must-win game. And that's why I'm really kind of confident in picking the Chiefs, because they don't tend to lose. In the Patrick Mahomes era, they've not lost a game like this, where they've had situations like this in the regular season where they've really needed wins. And they found a way to do it, and they've done it in the playoffs by and large also. So I'm pretty confident that they're going to take care of it here, but I don't feel great about it. I don't feel great. I just they're too good to be 5-5, really. I feel like, and I don't think the Colts are good enough to be 8-2. I think these teams are a lot closer, and their records should indicate that, but they don't. The Chiefs are going to have to find a way to win a 1-score game at some point. They're 0-5 in those games this year, after incredible run in those types of games last year. So I think they'll do it, though. I think they'll get this win, and the Colts suddenly find themselves in a situation where if they lose this week and then they get, I believe, Houston next week, they could be 8-4, and Houston could be sitting there at 7-5. So they could just be a game up on Houston. So some big games for the Colts too, who seem like they kind of had the South in the bag. They now have some really important games coming up as well. So both these teams kind of need this game. It would be huge wins for both of them. I think it's a bigger loss though if the Chiefs lose. And I do think that will matter. And I think the Chiefs will find a way to win that game. Okay, moving on to the Jets and the Ravens. Tyrod Taylor is going to go back as the starter for the Jets. Justin Fields will move to the bench after some really poor games. I'm sad about that because I like Justin Fields a lot, wanted it to work, but it does kind of seem like, I don't know, that's probably the right move. I think this is really interesting. Tyrod Taylor actually started his career with the Ravens, and I was able to find his first career play as a Raven. It was on December 4th, 2011. So I'm going to play that somewhere over here right now.
Tyrod Taylor's at quarterback. Joe Flacco's at the top of your screen at wide receiver. And they try
I like how I froze, like I was going to, like I was pausing myself, as if I can't just pause it and post and have myself freeze. That's why they give out acting awards right there, is because, you know, of that innate just instinct. And in 2011, Lamar Jackson was 14. He was a freshman at Santa Lucis, I believe that's how that's pronounced, high school in Florida. And I was able to find some footage of a freshman Lamar Jackson playing in high school. So the Ravens are on this 3-game winning streak. I don't think that ends in this game. I think the Jets trade away most of their defensive players, and I think the Ravens offense is going to cook in this game. I think Derrick Henry is going to run right through that Swiss cheese defense. Wow. Great metaphor. I think the big story here, the Jets trying to get a higher first round pick. They're going to be one of those teams that is going to be frustrated if they win a game. A couple years ago, they were really tracking toward getting the first overall pick. And then they won a game against, I believe, the Rams, who were a playoff team. May have even won the Super Bowl that year. I could be getting my years mixed up, but they kind of blew a chance, and they didn't get to pick Trevor Lawrence. Instead, they picked Zach Wilson. We all know how that ended. We still don't know how the Trevor Lawrence thing ends in Jacksonville, but I think that it's a fun story though with Tyrod Taylor coming back and where it all kind of started for him. I think he's been a really great professional that has played on a lot of different teams and really made his mark on the league, and is a really important player and kind of the story of the league, and has made an impact on a lot of the quarterbacks that we see today. So cool little to see him at this point in his career get a chance to go out and start, and I hope he plays well. But I am going to go with the Ravens, and I would be shocked if Devesh, he picked Baltimore. Okay, Cleveland at Vegas. I have one thing to say about this game. It's that Myles Garrett is on an incredible pace for sacks. Brian Burns has played, I think Brian Burns has played one more game than Myles Garrett, because the Giants haven't had their bye week yet, and he's still 2 behind. Myles Garrett's on pace for 25.5 sacks. Hopefully he can keep that going. The Cowboys defense got great pressure on Vegas this past week. I see no reason Myles Garrett can't walk it out of this game with 4 or 5 sacks unless the Raiders are able to, I don't know, game plan a little better. The Raiders just looked so bad, and it's hard for me to pick them in a game, but since the Browns, and Shadur Sanders is going to be making his first career start, which is probably more the story of this game. I do think with Shadur, he'll have the benefit of getting the first team reps in practice all week, getting the game plan kind of installed around him, which I think he'll look better than he did last week, but I also just don't think he's that good. And he'll have to deal with Max Crosby on that side, getting the pass rush. Devesh picked the Raiders. I don't know, man. I just, we have seen a game where Myles Garrett had 5 sacks and the Browns still lost by like 20 points. I think he could have a big game and they still don't find a way to win. So yeah, I'm gonna once again agree with Devesh and go with the Raiders, as much as I can't imagine either of these teams winning a game. Interestingly, my picks this year, the Raiders are the only team where I've picked every one of their games correctly. So yeah, the Raiders are going to beat the Browns. Lock it in. Jacksonville, they go on the road to play Arizona. Yeah, I mean, the Trevor Lawrence story, the only real difference I see in his 10 games he played last year and his 10 games he's played so far this year is the record. The record's better. Is that because of him? Who knows? Is it because of better coaching? But you look, it's eerily similar. And that seems bad. It seems bad that we're not seeing like a leap or like better play. It's just kind of the same. And I don't love that. As a guy that coming in, I was kind of expecting a leap from Trevor Lawrence, that he would play better and kind of take a next step. And maybe he's never going to reach that top tier that we kind of expected for him coming out of college, but maybe he would kind of be good, be good, be a difference maker at quarterback. And he just simply, he hasn't been. So they go on the road to play Arizona, who Jacoby Brissett, coming off a 47 pass completion game, setting a record. They haven't looked great either, not since they beat Dallas. Gosh, how do you pick a Jaguars game? You just don't know like which team is going to show up. They blew out the Chargers last week, and they looked like trash almost every other week. And then they beat the Chiefs one week. I think they will beat the Cardinals, but I don't feel good about it. Devesh also picked Jacksonville. We're agreeing too much. We're agreeing too much this week. None of this stuff is going to be able to happen because we're agreeing too much. All right. The Cowboys and the Eagles. I have a lot of notes here on this game. First of all, I'm going to do a little rant. Well, yeah, I'm going to do that first. I was trying to look back at the 2023-24 season, because I honestly, as a Cowboys fan, I was trying to give myself a little hope, which I don't know why. I don't know why I bother with that. And the reason I was like hopeful, I eventually found it. I'll show you the answer that was incorrect that I found, but this was the correct answer. After week 11 in 2023-24, the Eagles were 9-1. The Cowboys were 7-3. And then the Eagles kind of collapsed. They went 2-5 the rest of the season. The Cowboys went 5-2 and wound up winning the division on the last day of the season. So I was looking at it and I was kind of thinking that this Eagles team reminds me of that one, where it just feels like a bubble that is about to pop. There's a lot of tension. There's a lot of unhappiness between the players and the coaches, at least seemingly from the outside. And it just feels like it might fall apart, kind of like that season did. But I think the big difference here is not necessarily with the Eagles, it's with the Cowboys. I think this Cowboys team in 2023 was just a lot better than the one we're seeing. That being said, defense looked a lot better. Quinnen Williams played great in his first game as a Cowboy, granted against Las Vegas, who can't block anybody. But he had 5 pressures, which was the season high for him. He had a sack and a half. So I do think they're getting better on defense with him and with some of the other additions. Deron Bland Deron Bland had a good game against Vegas, and Overshone was back. I mean, they got a lot of additional guys coming out of their bye week, coming back from injury, and guys they added in trades. So I think there's reason for optimism. I don't. It's not going to be enough for them to kind of make a run at the playoffs. I fear. The other big thing with the Eagles, Lane Johnson is doubtful with a foot injury, and they're a different offense when they don't have Lane Johnson, just completely different. He's a huge difference maker. He's been amongst the best tackles in the league his entire career. So yeah, I mean, it seems like a game where the Cowboys, despite not having a very good defense, might be able to get enough pressure to at least threaten to beat the Eagles. I mean, they almost beat them week 1. I don't think this is going to be a blowout by any stretch. I don't think the Eagles are going to come into Dallas and blow them out. Now that I said that, they probably will. Now, here's where I got really annoyed with Google Gemini earlier today. I was trying to look all this up and figure out what the standings were after week 11 of the 2023 season. And it spat out this answer. The NFC East week-by-week results were led by the Philadelphia Eagles. Already, this sentence doesn't make any sense. Led by the Philadelphia Eagles, who finished with a 14-3 record, followed by the Dallas Cowboys, 12-5, New York Giants, 9-7-1, and Washington Commanders, 7-10. Here are the standings. No, that's not what it was. That's just, it's incorrect. It's incorrect. The Cowboys were not Cowboys were 12-5. That's the only one they got right. The Eagles, it said 14-3. They were 11-6. The Giants, it gave them 3 wins and a tie. What? Where did that come from? And the Commanders, it gave them 3 wins. So then I noticed below that, it kind of laid out a schedule for each team. And it starts out looking fine. I mean, Cowboys lost to the Jets week 1. Actually, no, it doesn't even start out looking fine. It has them playing the Jets weeks 1 and 2. And then it has them playing themselves week 6, which they lost. That kind of makes sense. And then beating the Jaguars. And then this is where it gets really weird. For the next 13 weeks, it says that the Cowboys played the Eagles. 13 weeks of Cowboys-Eagles until we get to the NFC Championship game and the Super Bowl where the Cowboys apparently beat themselves. And all of these teams, every one of these, all 4 of these teams played in the Super Bowl, I guess, is what I'm supposed to believe from this. I mean, the Cowboys played 13 straight weeks against the Eagles when they weren't playing them in all of the weeks. I don't know, man. I don't know what the point of this is. I don't know why this is the thing that appeared at the top of my Google search. I don't know why I'm complaining about this right now. It's just, what are we doing? What are we doing? Who is this for? It's funny. So is that the goal? Is the goal for me to be able to make, a minute and a half of content about how absurd this is? Is that what we're trying to do? Is the world just trying to create more funny situations that we can talk about? Maybe. That's a better explanation than any explanation I would get from Google. So, yeah, Google, if you're listening, what the hell? What the hell? All right, Falcons at Saints. Michael Penix for the Falcons. He is out for the rest of the season. So that means Kirk Daniel Cousins will be making his second start of the year. It's weird with Kirk Cousins. They signed him to this big contract last year. He came in, first 9 games, played pretty darn well. Completed 70% of his passes, 17 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. They were 6-3. Things were looking good. And then it just fell apart. A lot of that I feel like was chalked up to maybe like he aggravated his Achilles injury from the season before. But there's no good explanation for how it went from being okay, decent to, his next 8 games, 6 starts, 1 touchdown against 9 interceptions. It's just, he hit a wall that is kind of inexplicable. At least to me, sitting here right now. He will also be without Drake London. Their, borderline all-pro pass catcher. So that sucks. But we'll see what they're able to do against a Saints team that's not good. I think that's fair to say. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. Here's the big story for this, though. Atlanta traded their 2026 first-round pick to move up in last year's NFL draft. They moved up to the 26th overall pick. They gave up their second. They also got this third, which is not nothing. But they gave up a ton to move up like 20 spots in the draft. And at the time it was like, all right, you're giving up your first next year to get up to the 26th pick in this draft. You better hope that your first next year is later than the 26th overall pick. It's not. Right now, it's the 8th overall pick. The Rams, the number 1 team in the NFL right now, currently hold the 8th overall pick because Atlanta has lost 5 straight. They've now lost their starting quarterback. They're now turning to 39-year-old Kirk Cousins. I think that's how old he is. It's just, this could be a complete disaster for this entire organization if they aren't able to just string together enough wins here to just knock this pick down. That's kind of the goal now. Playoffs, not happening. Can we knock down this pick that the Rams are going to have? So I think it's going to be a weird situation where a team that's kind of out of contention is going to be playing really hard to make their pick worse because they gave it up to the Rams. Falcons Saints, huge rivalry, division game. Those are often ugly. I don't think this game will be anything approaching watchable, personally. Now, who do I think is going to win? Devesh actually never got back to me on this game. There were 2 games that he just didn't. He said, Bucks versus Rams and Atlanta versus New Orleans are the hardest for me. Okay. All right. I guess I'll move it when he decides. When he decides what he thinks. I think the Falcons will win, though. And that's more just a lack of faith in the Saints and what they're able to do. All right, here's the other game that he was having trouble picking. The Buccaneers and the Rams on Sunday Night Football. the Rams, really good shape for the 1 seed, potentially. If they're able to beat Tampa 43%, I mean, that's about as good as you can get at this point in the season. If you're almost even odds going into Thanksgiving to be the 1 seed, you're having a great season. Outside chance that Matthew Stafford passes Matt Ryan to become the 8th most prolific passer in NFL history, which is kind of cool. It'd probably take him. I don't think he's going to be throwing for 430 yards, but I just wanted to flag that because he's getting close. It might happen next week. I've made my feelings on Matthew Stafford very well known here. I think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer easily. I thought that before he won a Super Bowl. I thought he's just an incredible quarterback. And the fact that he's still playing at this high of a level, was it 16 years into his career? It's insane. So he is the front runner right now for the MVP. If he gets that, man, like what a resume that he's put together. Rams second in DVOA, only behind the Seahawks, who they beat last week. The Rams are just really good, both sides of the ball. The Buccaneers, I also think they're very good, but you can see here, I mean, their injury report is just as bad. What's up with the Bays? Green Bay and Tampa Bay, just really everybody hurt. A lot of these guys will play. They're just limited in practice for a lot of the same reasons that the Packers guys were. But it's sad because, and this doesn't even include the guys they have on IR, like Mike Evans. It sounds like Bucky Irving is not going to come back this week either. So another Sean Tucker game potentially. Well, Devesh didn't make a pick on this one. I'm going to make a pick. I'm going to go with the Rams. It is a return, kind of a homecoming of sorts here for Baker Mayfield. He played that one game for the Rams. He may have played more, but the big one was the game he came in and he was signed after the Panthers had cut him. He was signed, and 2 days later, he won a game for the Rams. One of the just a really great moment. It seemed like Baker's career was over. That kind of resurrected it, and he signed with Tampa. Now he's there, and he has that team playing really well. Now, here's what's interesting about that. If the Buccaneers do lose to the Rams, which they are, the Rams are favored, that will mean that Carolina on Monday Night Football in San Francisco will have a chance to become the number 1 team in the NFC South if they're able to win. So, what? This Panthers team makes no sense. And now they're potentially in a situation where if they win, they'll be in first place. According to the Athletics playoff calculator, if they win, that will put them at a 36% chance of making the playoffs, which, again, it feels a little low. I mean, if they are able to beat the 49ers, number 12 team in DVOA, a team that the Athletic thinks if they are able to win Monday night will be up to a 92% chance of making the playoffs, that puts them in a pretty strong spot. It gives them the tiebreaker over San Francisco in a tie with them. It puts them in first place in the South, and then also with an advantage over some of the wild card contenders. I don't know. The Panthers have a great opportunity on Monday night, despite not being good, to potentially be in first place. All that being said, I think they're going to lose by 20. I just can't believe, I can't imagine them going into San Francisco on Monday night and winning that game. If they prove me wrong, great. I picked them to make the playoffs, if anybody remembers. And if you don't remember, good, because I don't think they will. But despite looking like the worst team in the NFL at times this year, they might have a chance to become a first place team. And it's kind of similar to the Bears situation where it just doesn't really compute. It doesn't make sense. And we could end up after this week with just the weirdest slew of first place teams in the NFL. If you look at the AFC, no team that won their division last year is leading their division now. Broncos, Patriots, Colts, Steelers, they didn't win the divisions last year. They're now in first. They're the teams leading now. And then if you look at the NFC, the Eagles and Bucks won their divisions last year. But what I'm saying here is if the Panthers are able to do this, if the Bucks lose to the Rams and the Panthers beat the 49ers, it'll be 3 of 4, assuming the Bears are still there, a lot of assumptions being made here, but we could end up at the end of this week with 7 of the 8 divisions being led by a team that didn't win that division last year, and we are days away from Thanksgiving. It's getting late in the season, and there's some weird teams at the top of the playoff standings, and there are teams that have been perennial Super Bowl contenders. You know, the Lions, the Chiefs, the Ravens, that are currently on the outside looking in. So it's really setting up for, I think it's going to be a really exciting 6 to 7 weeks to finish this season out as these teams kind of shuffle around, as teams kind of jockey for last place to get that number 1 overall pick, as the Falcons try to resurrect themselves in order to make sure that, you know, this team sitting in the 2 seed right now in the NFC doesn't end up with a top 10 pick. It is, it's a great time in the NFL season. Fantasy playoffs coming up. You got these regular NFL playoffs. You know, the playoff race is going to be one of the best, I think, that we've seen in a while. So that's what I got for you. I hope you enjoyed listening to my voice as much as I did. I will be back next week. Devesh and I think, are going to record on Monday and talk about how these games played out, all except for the Panthers game. We'll know by then if the Panthers have a shot at first place. I just talked about that way more than probably anyone else you'll hear. So that's cool. People are going to think this is a like Panthers and Bills podcast, and I can't imagine a worse thing than a podcast that's centered around those two teams specifically. No offense to those teams. It's just like, what? So I guess what I'm saying is this podcast might not be good. I don't know. We'll see what people say. Let me know if I'm wrong. Let me know if this podcast is actually good. And if you think it is, subscribe, please. Wherever you are listening to it, there should be a place where you can subscribe. And that, I guess, is good. It tells things like Google Gemini that people like this podcast. And then Google Gemini can say things like, wow, this is the best podcast I've ever seen. You know what? Actually, I'm gonna, hey Gemini, I'm gonna Google, hey Gemini, what can you tell me about Derek Likes Sports? Let's just see. Can you tell me about the podcast Derek Likes Sports? Let's just see what it says. All right, generating. Okay. The podcast Derek Likes Sports is a bi-weekly show hosted by Derek Adam Thomas that features fun, wide-ranging conversations about sports, life, and the intersection of the two. It is aimed at both casual and diehard sports fans. Okay. That's not bad. Right? I think that's all stuff that I literally wrote that it found. But, you know, this was less fun than I thought it was going to be. It also says it also says that if there were a piss drinking contest that I would win. That's cool. I would even beat Elon Musk somehow. That's amazing. Wow. Cool. I hope you are online enough to get that joke. What else? Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow on Instagram and Blue Sky. That would be dope. You know, this is the kind of podcast where people say dope in 2025. And I think that's it. So enjoy the football games this weekend. Enjoy getting ready for Thanksgiving, the worst holiday. All right? I will see you next time.